All right, guys, I am here with Mr. Sean Wells. I even rudely kept him waiting from a technical difficulty, so that's my fault. But we got him here now, so we're going to utilize every bit of time that we can. Um, just for, I mean, I know a little bit about you just from following your work for literally years, um, which is kind of cool. But for people that don't know, maybe just give us a little bit of background on yourself. I know you're a well-educated man. You've been through some really cool transformation stuff on your own, just lifestyle transformation, mindset transformation, um, and your job, if you will, is unique. You know, it's interesting. It's not something you see every day. So if you can share as much or as little as you'd like.
Yeah, thank you. I am now known as the Ingredientologist. I used to be known as the world's greatest formulator. I didn't give myself that title. It was just because I had formulated about 500 products, patented
Holy
about 10
smokes.
ingredients, including tea cream, dynamine, um, the active isomer of BHB, ketones,
Wow.
dihydroberberine, uh,
That's
a lot of
cool.
things, a lot of cool things, a lot more coming out. Um, but yeah, I'm a biochemist. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm a certified sports nutritionist, a fellow in the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and I'm the ingredient guy. And so I've been through a lot physically. I've been morbidly obese. I've been anorexic. I've been 300 pounds. I've been 150 pounds, and I'm 6'2". Now I'm about
Wow.
20, 205, 210, something like that.
Somewhere in the
And
middle.
yeah, and work out and all that good stuff. Um, I had Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's. Like I couldn't even get out of bed. Like I was in like really bad pain. I was so inflamed. I thought my life was over when I was pursuing my master's in nutritional biochemistry at Chapel Hill. And I stumbled into the ketogenic diet, and that was about 20 years ago. And I've been doing keto ever since, and it made a massive difference for me. So I've been speaking out on keto for 2 decades now, and now it's very trendy and maybe even like starting to trend down. I don't know, but certainly I think that made a huge difference for me. And then about 8 years ago, I got a pituitary tumor, and that's when I really focused in on. I started doing paleo, intermittent fasting, strict keto, with cyclical and targeted ketogenic dieting. Um, Really looking at like biohacks, like looking at all my environmental and nutritional allergies, kind of just doing a deep dive on all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm still working on it, still looking at gut microbiome, genetics, epigenetics, all that kind of stuff. So, um, yeah, that's my story.
That's man, you have such an interest. I think that's why I've always admired your work, because I love supplements. I, I don't want to overstate it, but I have a little bit of experience with formulating, and obviously being that I'm part of a group of supplement stores, I would say that my I fit pretty well as the ingredient guy in our group, if that makes sense. It's always fascinated me. And I've been morbidly obese, 300 pounds at 5'6", and I've also been 150 pounds. So I think that's why I just have a lot of similarities. And I look up to your work. So I actually, for some reason, I did not know that you had done dynamine and teocrine. That's so cool to me. I mean, all of them are, but for some reason, I don't know why. I just missed that part.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Any exciting ingredients in the works at all?
I work very closely with NNB Nutrition, and you can look up like ergothionine, which we call mitoprime, is really cool. it's actually like a mitochondrial antioxidant it's quite amazing. It works like unlike anything else. It smokes
Cool.
like CoQ10 or PQQ or glutathione or anything like that. If you look into mitochondrial health, it's the most important thing to me, like in terms of when we talk about aging, disease, like anything beyond just a straight genetic disease. Almost all disease correlates back to mitochondrial dysfunction, and those things manifest in insufficient cellular energy states, ICE, which then manifests in glycation, blood sugar damage, inflammation, and oxidation. And so you have more rapid biological aging than chronological aging, and you have a higher propensity towards all metabolic disease. So figuring out your mitochondria and protecting your mitochondrial health is a huge part of that equation. And then we have one called 𝐲𝐵A that is a antioxidant. Or sorry, that's a exercise mimetic. Basically, it
That sounds
mimics.
interesting.
Yeah, it mimics exercise. There's been some peptides that do this, but this is actually the signal that happens naturally in your body. You catabolize valine, the amino acid in the branch chain in the amino acid muscle pool. So when you're intensely working out, you break down valine and it breaks down into 𝐲𝐵A. And 𝐲𝐵A is then a signal that you're working out hard. And so taking 𝐲𝐵A kind of amplifies that whole thing. So you're getting more out of every rep, out of every step, essentially. Like, that, 12, I don't know, 12 sets might look like 16 to your body, or
Okay.
8 reps might feel like 12 to your body, or something like that, like where you're just getting more out of your workouts. It's an
More density. That's pretty cool. What's like the half-life on something like that? Is it something that you would take and it would last the duration of a normal workout, or is it like an effect, a lasting effect?
Yeah, that's we're trying to do more research on that. We're trying to see if taking it a second time a day like might be helpful, but it's pricey, so I would like
Okay.
focus on kind of that 30 minutes prior to your workout, so that it's primed when you're hitting your
Yes, sir.
routine. Yeah.
So, because it's a pricey ingredient, do you think that it's something that will make its way? And I mean, sure it will, but into pre-workouts, or is it going to be something that's marketed as a standalone, additional sort of like niche product in the beginning?
Yeah, there are some standalones right now, and then there are some companies that are starting to formulate it in. It's just the dose is the question. So like hopefully we can keep getting the dose up. Like probably 500 milligrams to even 1,000 milligrams might be like the most efficacious. And some companies are toying around with like 100 milligrams and things like that, like in a formula. And some of the ones that are doing standalones are doing kind of that full dose. So it just remains to be seen. We're doing the human studies now. There's a lot of human studies on it endogenously, meaning it occurs naturally in your body, and there's literally we have like a 60-page white paper on 𝐲𝐵A itself. Like there's a lot of data on 𝐲𝐵A, and there's a lot of animal data on 𝐲𝐵A and in vitro data on 𝐲𝐵A. We just don't have a lot of human data on 𝐲𝐵A as an exogenous supplement, which is what we're working on right now. But I mean, it's really kind of a holy grail of like everything associated with intense exercise can be signaled by 𝐲𝐵A. So what you see when 𝐲𝐵A levels are elevated in the plasma, you see improved neuroplasticity and improved BDNF in the brain. You see improved VO2 max and endurance. You see resistance to fatigue. You see better recovery. You see improved red blood cell delivery. You see improved muscle mass, reduced fat mass, improved ketone creation and utilization, and improved glucose tolerance and glycogen storage and utilization. You see, it just improved bone mineral density. Basically, everything associated with exercise is associated with beta. So it's pretty incredible.
That is. It sounds like, you simply put, exercise mimetic, and then you just kind of go through the benefits of exercise, and it sounds like it's really hitting close to home. That's pretty cool. Another one that you mentioned, this is all just for me because I'm just nerdy, but I've never tried the dihydroberberine before. I actually utilize a glucose disposal agent currently, and I find, for me, I've always struggled with my blood sugar because I struggled with my weight my entire life and I was pre-diabetic, and I find that it does help me. Now, this is a question I have for you. Lately, I've been asking myself, because I check my blood glucose, so I've tested it, so to speak, and I know that they absolutely work in getting the blood sugar lower faster. But is that something that would have happened naturally anyway? Does it matter that much that it's coming back to the baseline sooner? As far
100%. So, first off, to go back to metabolic dysfunction, metabolic disease, really revolves around glycation and mitochondrial dysfunction, that blood sugar damage. That's a huge part of all of this. We don't do fasting anymore, or starving. We have too easy of food access. We don't do resistant starches and high fiber foods. We don't have whole foods hardly anymore. They're ultra processed foods. They're high bliss point foods that make you overeat them so that you don't have satiety signals. We don't exercise like we used to. We're more sedentary. So, probably, and then in the winter, we would have been eating largely meat and things like that. And, in the summers, it would have been hard work for food as well, whether you're hunting it or looking for it in the, in the plains and the forest, digging it up, preparing it, all these things. And they, again, would have been resistant starches or high fiber products. So at least 50% of the time we were in ketosis. Now we have high glycemic carbohydrate, we're sedentary, all this kind of stuff. It's I don't think carbs are the devil. I don't think carbs are bad. I think that's a complete misunderstanding. I think in our society that is so lazy, that is so overfed, that carbs can be bad because they can be part of this overriding the satiety, high bliss point kind of stuff. When you walk in a convenience store, that convenience store is basically set up as a drug warehouse, essentially. You see the colors and you see the caffeine and the sugar and the tobacco and the alcohol and the porn and the lottery and the whatever. The whole thing is just set up for dopamine explosion. And that's part of the reason that we're overeating these foods. They're literally engineered that way. They're made to be sweet, like a soda is made to be sweet on the front and empty on the back, so you keep drinking it. You keep feeling unsatisfied on the back end of it, and you keep twisting off and drinking, twisting, drinking, twisting, drinking, twisting, drink. You can literally watch people do this.
Yeah, it's not, when you understand flavoring a little bit, right? It's just you get the hit of flavor and then it becomes flat, at the end of that palate cleanse. So then it makes you want to keep drinking it, right?
Right. So, you know, that when you look at this, berberine is one of the most potent glucose disposal agents that's ever been seen. It's actually more effective than metformin head to head.
It's
And
crazy.
metformin has actually been shown potentially, if you extrapolate the results in humans, it looks like maybe by taking metformin you would live about 2.5 years longer. And there's
Gotcha.
very few drugs that you could say that about. And the
That's
biggest
fair.
reason is because of glycation, mitochondrial dysfunction, this blood sugar damage, etc. So, as an example, when I was formulating IC5 for BioTrust, when I was their chief science officer, I formulated a glucose disposal agent product, and one of the main ingredients was berberine. And by the way, probably about 95% of the berberine on the market is trash. I tested 44 samples and only 2 or 3 tested out. So be careful with who you use. Like I would, use something like, I know BioTrust does test out because I formulated that one, but like Thorn, something like that. And anything that has the new version dihydroberberine that says 𝐂𝐭 is legit, because that's a branded one that I work with NNB on. So like, Genius Blood Sugar uses it. There's some other products, Evo Pure. But anyway, just using the regular berberine. So I was keto, and I did this like 1 week apart, this experiment where I had 5 double stuffed Oreos and 2 frosted Pop-Tarts. And I checked my blood sugar.
And you were in keto, sorry.
Yeah, I was in keto. Yeah. I checked my blood sugar every 30 minutes. And, both weeks I was around 60 to 70 baseline. And without the berberine, I got up to 199 at 2 hours, and I wasn't even sure if I was coming back down.
Holy man, that's
it's very common. I mean, I'm someone who puts on weight very easily, and I think to some degree you can argue metabolically damaged, whatever, like that's very
same.
But regardless, sometimes also when you do keto, you can become like a little bit glucose or carbohydrate intolerant too. I mean, you're just not using it as a fuel that much.
Yeah.
But anyway, regardless, I was at 199, and I'm not even sure when I was coming back down. When I did this a week later, back in ketosis, the same experiment, but with 500 milligrams of berberine, I never got above 100.
So it's like half.
And at 1 hour, I was coming back down.
Yeah, so that's got to make a huge difference if you think of the frequency of feeding.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Part of glucose disposal agents is the nutrient partitioning effect, where you have a greater propensity to store like the glucose as glycogen in the muscle rather than adipose
tissue.
Yeah, so that would be just one of its many effects, but like you can look up advanced glycation end products and how those relate to aging, how blood sugar relates to the sirtuin genes, the SIRT genes that are associated with aging, and telomere length and all that kind of stuff. So the lower your blood sugar, the better. So I have like 3 labs that I think could change the world if we looked at them like every 6 months, but we don't. And it really would tell you your status in terms of mitochondrial health, and therefore your biological age and your propensity to get nearly all chronic disease. And those
That's
3
some powerful stuff. Yeah.
Those 3 things would be hemoglobin A1C, which is a longer term indicator of blood sugar.
Okay.
It would be CRP, C-reactive protein, as an inflammatory marker. And then it would be oxidized LDL as a measure of oxidation. If I was to add in a couple others, I would add in LPA, lipoprotein A, for heart disease risk, and vitamin D3 levels, because I just think it's critical. So those would be my top 5. And that would be $200 every 6 months. And we could say you have a very low chance of getting cancer, diabetes, heart disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, et cetera, et cetera. And we could say that you look mitochondrially like you are 43 instead of 56. Great job. Keep up the great work.
I'm so happy you said that, because I'm from Canada, so it is sometimes hard to get even normal CBC, like regular blood work done, if you don't have a good reason, like to just go in and kind of want to tune up per se, like, hey, I just want to check. It's kind of like, well, if you've had it done in the last year or 6 months, it's like, well, you look like nothing's sticking out. You're fine, So I just paid to have everything except for, and I wasn't even familiar with what you just said, but I think LPA, is that correct?
Yeah.
I didn't have that done because I didn't even know to ask for it, but I had everything else done. So I'm excited to get some of that stuff back. So vitamin D3, I think, is super important also.
Yeah. Yeah, and then some of the other ingredients I've worked on recently, some of them I can't talk about yet, but we've worked on grains of paradise, which
it's cool.
you probably heard of, working on brown adipose tissue.
Ooh.
We have a powdered C8, the C8 MCTs. The caprylic acid is more ketogenic than a standard MCT. And it's like powdered on a tapioca fiber and pea protein, so it has no glycemic effect. RBHB, we sell the majority of the active isomer ketones on the market, and it's been shown to be about 3 times better than a mixed isomer, which I'd say probably 95% of the market is like DLBHB.
Yeah.
So there's very few that are D or R BHB, but we sell that one. And by the way, the sodium form seems to be the best salt. The calcium probably the most inferior.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's I didn't even ever think about the difference between sodium and calcium. Man, I'm learning a lot today. I love it. I speaking of, since we're on this topic of insulin responses, one of the questions that I had here from one of the Instagram questions was actually asking, and I don't know the answer, and that is, does glycerol cause an insulin response?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can see why someone would ask that. I would say it depends, and I don't think so at the doses that you would typically be doing to see like cellular hydration volumization. I think,
Gotcha.
Especially like, a powdered form and you've got other actives. No, I mean,
yeah, you're
it's
thinking
kind of
like
saying like even if you were to take like 2 grams of sugar, are you going to see an insulin response?
Yeah,
I mean, so 2 grams of glycerin? No.
Yeah, because on the high end, you might find 5 grams of a 65% glycerol on the market. Like that would be the top, but most of it's going to be between 1 and 3, right? So
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
would
agree.
say there's little, and if you're using it prior to a workout, that's pretty inconsequential.
That's
I've
very,
never
very
really
true.
seen anyone have like blood sugars greatly affected by that. So
Me neither, and that's what I thought, but I just figured I'd get your take on it.
yeah. And we
Uh,
just finished, by the way, yeah, the 65% powdered glycerol. So,
really, another one, another patented one.
yeah, it's called Glycer Drive. Hmm.
Oh, that's exciting.
The other ones are 55% now.
Like Glycer Pump and Hydromax.
Hmm.
They are been having a lot of storage problems, from what I
Yep,
understand.
yep, yep. And that's where we put in a lot of work on that front. Yeah.
Because
But
a lot of manufacturers were having to like dump mass quantities of it or send it back just because it got rock hard in the warehouse, especially if it's a hot climate and they air condition the warehouse. From what I understand, just from
yeah,
talking to people in the industry, yeah, that's and it's not a cheap ingredient that you want just going bad in the in the warehouse, you know.
right, exactly.
Exactly. This is going to be right up your alley, and I have a definitely a basic understanding of it. But someone was asking if they're following a ketogenic diet, much like you do, is it advantageous to use like a ketones, like a BHP ketone supplement, and maybe why would that be advantageous? I think they were referring to around their workout, you know, because they're marketed as, you know, it's something you would have. Maybe pre or intra workout, maybe even post. But and I know what I recommend, but I'd just really like to see what you have to say.
It's a super complicated answer, but I will say that yes, like ketones can have an ergogenic benefit whether you're in ketosis or not. I would say if you're someone that does like a deep intermittent fast, or you're already like doing an extended fast and you're ketogenic, probably not.
Gotcha.
But that's not many people. And most people are doing like net carbs and,
Mm-hmm.
eating like a lot of gluconeogenic foods, like high protein diets. And so bumping up your ketone levels can give you cognitive clarity. Another thing that it might do, some people worry that maybe it will negatively affect your adaptation, because if ketones are elevated exogenously via the supplement, then you wouldn't be breaking down ketones from fat as much. But that's like really transient. And what happens, like, I mean, that might be the case for a couple hours, but the cognitive clarity that you get, the reduced appetite that you get, and then the priming of these MCT transporters, carboxylic acid transporters, um, those will be primed to use more ketones. So the deeper you get into ketosis more often, the better, because you'll end up using ketones faster and easier. So let's put it this way, like people are always chasing blood ketone levels, and that doesn't always make sense. Like you don't chase like blood glucose levels. You don't say like, oh, like dude, like I'm at a 300 or a 400. You know?
You're
No,
dead
you
now.
actually get more insulin sensitive, right? So you're
Yeah.
using the blood glucose, so you're storing the blood glucose as glycogen. But in this case, I mean, that can happen over time. So I always ask people, well, how do you feel? It doesn't matter whether it's like a 0.7 or a 1.8. What really matters is how you feel. And there's a difference between having a high level in your plasma and using the ketones in the tissues, which it's not measuring. So I think the ketogenic supplements are just something to experiment with, and really just see how it works for you and see what a deeper state of ketosis feels like, similar to when you do an extended fast, that you get that clarity, that you get that drop in appetite, the satiety effect, that you get, you know, enhanced cognition and athletic performance. So it's worth experimenting with. It's going to vary from person to person, and it just depends on your diet. But if you're someone who's eating like higher protein, if you're someone that's playing with net carbs more, doing cyclical and targeted ketogenic dieting, but you consider yourself keto, you'll see a lot of benefit.
That's fair.
I think if you're someone that's doing very strict keto and does a lot of extended fasting, you're not going to see as much benefit.
That totally makes sense to me. And I think sometimes that's what's tough about keto is there's a lot of contextualizing that needs to be done, because you could have 10 people say they're on keto and their diets and their habits and eating patterns just are not the same at all, which is not a bad thing. It's just tough when you're trying to recommend like a specific supplement or to a line of dieting consumers, you know?
Right.
So I love that answer. The next one's kind of fun. And I know this is a barrel of monkeys kind of, but I know you'll have it on the top of your head. Someone asked, in Mr. Sean Wells' opinion, what are maybe a couple, 2 or 3 pre-workout ingredients that you think are kind of like should be in a lot more products but isn't?
I think it's going to be some of the ones that we just talked about, probably.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I'm a big fan of, I do like citrulline for pumps, and agmatine. I think those are great ingredients.
They seem to work really well in conjunction.
Yeah, and
Also.
Norvaline could be good, but one, about 90% of it's trash on the market. And then
you keep saying that, hurting my feelings.
Yeah, and then 2, it's usually way too low dose. What else would I like? I think like having Beba for sure, like I just talked about.
Yeah, well, that sounds unreal.
And probably taking something like Grains of Paradise with a workout to ramp up brown adipose tissue, which is mitochondrial activation as well. I like 𝐂𝐭 a lot. I think that I actually prefer it over HMB, not only for anti-catabolism, but potentially anabolism. Those would be some of my top.
Yeah, that's definitely an awesome list.
Yeah, I do think 𝐅𝐵HB, sometimes called DBHB, is something to look at. In conjunction with some other ingredients. I think you could get some ergogenic benefit from it. I think glycerol would have benefit, not just with pumps, but hydration. Taurine is a cheap one.
I was just going to ask you about taurine, literally.
I love taurine. I think, again, I just buy a bag of it and go heavy with it. I use about 5 grams pre-workout.
Really? Do you find that it takes away from this, if you're having any, but stimulant effect, or is that something that I never found that?
I don't really use stimulants a whole lot.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, I think taurine it helps. It really gives me more mental clarity. I feel like my performance is enhanced. And I'll tell you, along the lines of cheap ingredients that are super effective is bicarbonate. You just have to figure out the GI distress. But man, you want to look up performance differences. I mean, bicarbonate beats every ingredient ever made on the market. It's incredible. I mean, it's the ultimate buffer. It's literally what your body uses. The problem is, you'll just have
not
pretty
puking.
severe GI distress with diarrhea and upset stomach, and so you have to kind of cut up the doses and do it slowly throughout the day, and it's just not an easy solve. But
sounds like we got a job for you.
Yeah,
Job security.
I've thought about digging into that one and figuring it out. But and then creatine is still great. I still
Yeah.
use creatine. I still see great benefits from that every time I get on it. I feel stronger. I feel fuller. I feel like I can pull off more reps. And beta alanine is one that I I wouldn't see a whole lot of benefit when I was just doing a long strength routine. But when I was doing kind of more Metcon training, beta
Pushing it.
alanine seemed to really help me. So
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I find the same. Like I've gone through phases of really high rep, high volume training, and I found a difference there when the workouts were maybe like deep into 2 hours. But I mean, I like the psychosomatic effect. I'll be honest, and I know that that's exactly what it is. But
of
I,
the
I
tingles.
yeah, it's just for now, obviously I'm saturated for
Mhm.
years. So like I really don't get really tingly, but I can still, there's like an acute change, you can just sort of feel it. And all that says is like, okay, there's some uptake going on. It's time to get going,
Yeah.
so I don't mind that. You actually sparked a couple of questions that I have just because you said, like taurine, I think is an underutilized ingredient. Creatine, I think is awesome. Is there some other stuff that you're taking that's like not exciting? Like I know there's all these new exciting things like, dihydroberberine, like you're mentioning a bunch of them, but like a lot of people I think ask me like, hey, what do you think I should take? And it's like, well, without talking to you and knowing everything, probably maybe a high quality omega, a
Yeah,
good
exactly. Yeah.
multivitamin,
Yeah,
like
my basics would be like yeah, exactly. A good quality multivitamin that has organic forms of minerals, so like citrate, malates, or amino acid chelates like glycinates and things
yeah,
like that. With the minerals, look for the active B vitamins, so things like methylcobalamin, P5P, um, um, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Like you want the active forms of the B vitamins so your body doesn't have to convert them. So getting a really good quality multi, um, a high DHA fish oil, a really good probiotic.
in
Um,
what strain?
that's a tough one too. Like I love the stuff that Deerland Enzymes does. They have like spore forms like this DE111. That's one of my favorite forms.
Okay.
And that's one that I used when I was with BioTrust. And I like with these probiotics that they're either microencapsulated or spore form so that they're protected. They still do have benefit even if they're dead. There's been studies now that show um, that there's what's called like phage activity, and it kind of feeds like the good bacteria and creates more good bacteria. But it's ideal to have it living. And I think just, it's impossible to keep the stuff cold all the time. And
Yeah.
so I think microencapsulated or spore form
Cool.
probiotics are ideal.
And then anything else? Like, are you taking like, do you supplement on top of your multi, like with any D vitamin?
Yeah, exactly.
Any?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because typically your multis are dry, and dry vitamin D doesn't really work that well. Um, so taking D3K2 together is ideal. I like 5,000 IU oil-based vitamin D3 with like 100 microgram K2 in the MK7 form. That would be ideal. Those are berberine is literally, I think, the most important ingredient that everyone should be on because of, like I said, just as protection. Because
Man,
we are,
that's so cool that you said that because to have a guy of your place in the industry, say that when it's going against the grain a little bit, because like a lot of people would probably put that last, or like, because I hear it all the time, and I feel really good on it. I have forever, and that's probably not even like, I've never got to take like a super berberine or a dihydroberberine or anything like that, just because the Canadian market hasn't had any products that have hit with it. But I can't wait to get my hands on some of that stuff and try it.
Yeah, it's super important. Like I said, when it relates to um, aging, disease, cellular energy, like it becomes pretty critical. Um, and I would say of all the antioxidants I've looked at and worked on, I mean, this ergothioneine is probably the most fascinating. I'm really excited about that. So
It
I
sounds
would
really
put it
cool.
I would put it above, CoQ10, PQQ, glutathione. I mean, just about anything.
Yeah.
Still believe in like a liposomal vitamin C. But this ergothioneine, you actually have unique transporters specifically for ergothioneine, the ET1 transporter. So your body was actually built to transport this antioxidant that is typically gotten from mushrooms. And then it will store it as needed and then use it to protect the mitochondria, not just the cell. And I mean, this is literally protecting the mitochondria, which is like the most critical thing. I do believe like mito is the next keto, like
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
going to be what everyone talks about. So I do believe that ergothioneine is going to be one of those ones that like it's one
Stands
of the
out.
reasons I think like people don't get a lot of effects from antioxidants. Like and antioxidants typically if you take too much can actually become pro-oxidant.
Yeah.
So and antioxidants can have that counterproductive effect maybe around a workout or around the healing process or around a disease like cancer like. And this doesn't work that way. It works on a very different level, a more fundamental level, like going literally through transporters and the way it's stored and the way it's brought into the cell. It's almost like when you study iron. I don't know if you've ever studied iron, but there's
A
so many
little. Yeah.
checks and balances with the way iron gets held and transported and brought in through the body because it's so pro-oxidative.
Mhm.
This ergothioneine is almost like that. It's like this super antioxidant that's literally fascinating, just amazing.
I'm excited to see some of the stuff come out on that. I think that sounds really exciting too. I think that'd be a cool product.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of mushrooms, what is it? What do you think about some of the, like Pico 2 and some of the mushroom blends, ancient mushroom blends? Are you a fan, or you think it's overhyped,
Yeah, no,
or?
I love mushrooms and I do believe that the majority of the benefit as far as immune system enhancement, VO2 max, recovery, etc., is actually coming from L-ergothioneine. That's the active that's in the
From
mushroom.
those mushrooms?
Yeah.
Oh, holy smokes, that's pretty okay. Now you've even piqued my interest even more. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
I use a product that has Pico 2 in it, and so I really like that. And then I actually supplement with lion's mane on top of that.
Hmm.
I do notice a difference if I'm, if I fall off for 5 to 6 days, I can tell a difference. I feel really good on lion's mane. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I love lion's mane as well, and that's something that you would see on ergothioneine as well as the improved neuroplasticity. So yeah.
That's really that's really cool stuff.
Hmm.
Um, next question. Uh, what is Mr. Wells' thought on team? This is such a dogmatic question. Team BCA, team EAA, or no team?
That's yeah, that's a great question. And like even in the ISSN, which I'm in, even at the fellowship level, which I'm in, there's a lot of variance. I'll say this: if you're already getting enough protein, I don't think it matters.
Okay.
I really don't think it matters. Where it starts to matter is when you're not getting enough protein. One, when you're hypocaloric. Two, when your quality of protein is low and you're maybe not getting enough and the protein you're getting is low, like a vegan. Or like when somebody's cutting, for a contest. Or when somebody has renal disease and they're trying to maximize the benefits, then, or if you're fasting, if you're doing a lot of extended fasting, which BHB, when elevated, is anti-catabolic and does preserve lean body mass, but it's only going to preserve so much for so long, depending on your fast. So I would say that, I lean towards, and dose is going to be a factor here too. I lean towards, there's been studies that show like if you have an inferior protein source or a lower protein level, just adding leucine to it is enough. Or taking more of that protein if it's a lower quality source. So, for example, if you took 25 grams of whey and it has about 2.8 grams of leucine, that's good enough to optimize muscle protein synthesis. With wheat protein or soy, you might have to take 50 grams. You just have to take more. And then that leucine level equals about the same thing. Or you could take that wheat or soy protein and add about a gram and a half of leucine, and it seems like you get a similar muscle protein synthesis response. So I just, the BCAAs, I think are like something that I add when I'm fasting. I add when I'm doing like extended fasts, or honestly, sometimes I use them like if I'm trying to just cut calories and I'm trying to stay anabolic and I don't want to eat another meal.
Totally fair. It's kind of like how I recommend them.
That's kind of how I use them. Are they necessary? Should you be chugging gallons of them? No, there's something called like a refractory response, like where, you take so much and there's no more response. It's like muscle
the bell curve has fell off.
Muscle protein synthesis isn't really about like how much, even though I just told you leucine levels, it's actually more about like how quickly the levels get into the plasma and how quickly it rises. So that's why like the more insulin resistant you get as you age, there's a higher propensity for you to never optimize muscle protein synthesis and be insulin resistant. So you start doing this sarcopenic obesity trade-off where you trade muscle for fat. That's because you're never optimizing muscle protein synthesis. Sometimes you're taking enough protein, but you're not as sensitive, like, with GLUT4 translocation, which you could do just by taking a walk several times a day, especially like postprandial walk, like right after you eat. It's massive for GLUT4. But something like berberine would be helpful. And then also, because you're, again, like you want AMP-K to be elevated, you want your glucose sensitivity to be elevated, but also your androgens are dropping off as you age. So to me, taking like either testosterone replacements or taking at least DHEA as you age, and then taking berberine as you age, taking a walk after you eat. Those are some good things you can do. And then making sure that maybe you're adding some leucine or BCAAs to your meal if you're older, or getting a larger protein bolus. But most people as they age aren't eating enough protein. They're insulin resistant. They're sedentary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's why like HMB and some of these things have had incredible results in people that are elderly. Or things like metformin have had incredible results in people that are elderly, because it's that sarcopenic obesity thing. That they're never spiking leucine quickly enough, right?
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. So I have kind of one more question, I guess, and that is, where do you think the industry is headed? Is it, and this, I'm going to try to explain this the best I can, because this is a question from me. So like, and I'll have to give you some backstory. So like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it was, when clinical dosing started getting popular, like we started to see the prop blends drop off, and then all of a sudden, oh look, we got rid of arginine, AKC, and we got citrulline in a 6 gram, started to see some good things. And I get asked this question once in a while, and it is, well, now that we have these clinical doses, like pretty much every pre-workout, if we're taking that category just as an example, like in our stores, you pick up one or the other, besides stimulant levels and stuff, they're similar. There's only so many ingredients to go around. And I kind of get asked, like, what's going to happen next? And yes, I know there's always new ingredients being made by people like you, and that's amazing. But I think that quality is going to be kind of the next stepping stone.
100%. So I want to see people that, like, I mean, yeah, they're listing these ingredients, but the problem with some of these smaller companies is they're letting the contract manufacturer do the testing for them. And some of the smaller contract manufacturers that are doing these lower order minimum runs, they are doing what's called dry labbing, where they just type up results. They don't even send them out for real testing. So, and let alone the company, like you having a quality control team at the company where you're testing the raws, you're qualifying the raws, you're doing work on that. Like I said, I had to test 44 different berberines until I found 3 of them that tested out. And then I got into negotiations on the 3 of them. And then I started speccing them out and, seeing what their supply chain's like, et cetera. So that takes a lot of work. And then when you do the finished product, you have to see that there isn't interactions. There's nutrient interactions. So you have to put in overages of certain ingredients. Like with the B vitamins, you might have to like double the level that goes in so that it meets the 2-year shelf life. And sometimes these ingredients just interact in an odd way. And when you test the finished product, the right levels aren't there. So then you have to do some deep work with the lab. You got to do some standardization. You got to change your levels of this, excipient levels, the way you blend things. I mean, typically, if you have good quality control, you can spend just a year working on that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So these companies that are just cranking out products like, oh yeah, we'll get one out in 3 months. And then, they're not doing their own testing or quality control. They're the next ones to get phased out. I mean, to be honest. And I think pretty soon you're going to just have like the QR code testing where you can see how that bottle tested out with each lot.
We have a few companies that we support highly that have that feature already. It's so cool. And we support the companies that do those things because we think it's important.
It's expensive.
And it's very expensive. And, just being a supplement nerd and mildly educated, over the years, if you're using like a patented, whatever it is, pretty much, a patented version of beta alanine or a patented version of nitrosogene or to me, I can always tell the difference. Like a product that's using, like a products that someone like you would make, like patented teacrine, it makes a huge difference. And there's tons of brands that don't have that,
I agree. Using the branded ingredients is a big difference. I mean, yes, there's a little bit more cost, but there's a lot of quality control work that goes into that make, keeping that brand legitimate. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of testing. Um,
Plus the R&D.
it's tons of work, and it's a whole different level. That's why I do really admire a company like, I've always talked about them and never gotten a dime from them. Never formulated a product for them, is Genius.
Oh, okay,
In
yeah,
that,
I'm
in that
familiar.
they go like almost every ingredient they can find is a branded ingredient. And so their products are great products. I mean, I'm just a big fan. So,
I I see the market kind of moving that way. Consumers are getting more educated. The space is moving fast and getting more educated. I mean, it always has, but I think now it's more than ever. I think it's going to go that way where you're going to start to see people want to see some of those trusted versions of ingredients.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. With that said, man, that's I've kept you for over an hour, and I know I had you waiting too, so I won't keep you anymore. I had so much fun with this. I could literally pick your brain forever. I would love to do it again sometime, and
Sure, sure. Like,
kind of revisit.
yeah, I mean, if people listen to this and they have a bunch of questions, just collect the questions and we'll do it again.
We'll do it again. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. We got to get in touch too. I need to get my hands on some of this this berberine. I've been hearing about it. Like the guys, I know the guys over at Price Plow pretty well, and they've been. I've been watching them, and then I'm talking to Ben, and he loves it, and I'm like, man, I need to get some of this. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But
For sure, for sure. All
in
right,
any case,
brother.
I really appreciate you coming on, and again, sorry I kept you waiting a little bit at the beginning, and yeah, we'll do it again. It was fun.
Yeah, no worries. All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks, man. Have
Talk
a great
soon.
evening.
Yeah,
All right,
you
see you,
too.
brother.